All right. Hello, hello. Welcome to the live. If you are a Black screenwriter, emerging film, TV, whatever, you are in the right place. We are getting into it. Another live here. Uh, if it's a little blurry, like especially if you're watching on the replay, if it's a little blurry, it's going to clear up. It just has to do with the streaming service. My bad. But we are talking all month really about revision. And today is a big one because I'm going to be sharing with you how to address script feedback that you receive while keeping your vision and your voice. All right. How do you actually do that? All right. So first, let me introduce myself. My name is Kristen Iris Johnson. I am a showrunner, film producer, screenwriter, and the CEO of Black Screenwriter Alliance, which is a membership community where we bring together emerging Black film and TV writers who are serious about building a career in the industry and bring them together so that they can elevate their writing skills, confidently build industry relationships, and forge their own path in the industry that works for them. But you get to do it with allies because allies are super, super important. Having your community is super, super important. And it can make the difference in where you go and what you do in this industry. So if you want to check it out, you can come join us inside free for 7 days, blackscreenwriteralliance.mn.co. But yeah, let's dive in because today, like I said, we're continuing our topic of revision and talking about, in particular, how to handle and how to address feedback. So make sure that you like and subscribe and enjoy as we get in. So the first thing I want to say, I have kind of several points about this. Uh, the handling of feedback. One, feedback is really, really important. You want to make sure that you are getting feedback because no matter what, like if your project is, if you pitch it, if you present it to someone for, potential green light, you want to move it forward, which is what most of us are doing, you are going to get feedback from people. You'll get feedback from producers, from execs, from might be from studio, might be from network, might be a director that you're getting feedback from, might be an actor, depending on what kind of, what level your actors are that are on your project. So you have to get used to getting feedback. And the best way also to even get to that point, to even get to the point where people are considering your project, is to make sure you are presenting them with the best possible version that you can on your own. And that means that you should be getting feedback before you even try and pitch it or send it to somebody for interest. You want to get feedback from people that you know, that you can trust their insight, that you trust their knowledge of story, their understanding of story. And that way you can take that and incorporate the things that they're seeing that might be blind spots for you. So whether you're in that phase, the pre-pitching phase, or you're getting feedback in the post-pitching phase, and that's where it can be a little trickier because you are now getting feedback from decision makers where it's a little harder to just be like, oh, I don't like that note. I'm not gonna listen to it. Whichever stage you're in, the first thing I would say when it comes to feedback is stay open, right? This is a collaborative process. Film, television, it's collaborative. Your script is not going to be running on screen word for word, running through the pages so that your audience can read it. Your script has to be transferred, it has to evolve, and it has to go from the page to something that is visual, that is auditory, something that comes alive, that has actors, that has all kinds of people coming together. So be open. That means that you also have to check your ego and you need to check your defenses. So I want to start with that because I want to start with that because I want to impart on you how important it is to have a collaborative mindset, to understand that by and large, the people giving you feedback want your story to be the best version that it can be. They are, trying to help you, even if they don't know how to do it in the right way. By and large, people are not likely giving you feedback because they want to sabotage your story, right? They may give feedback that doesn't work. They may give feedback that you don't like, but is actually needed. But by and large, people are trying to make your story better. So check your ego. What people's feedback is not about you as a person. It is about your story. And when you can come to it from that place, you can really get the most out of the notes that you get. So check your defenses. It's normal to want to defend your choices on the page, especially if it's something you feel really proud of or something that, you feel is really needed. It's normal to want to defend yourself, or defend your choices, but stay open to what you hear. That said, you don't have to take every note. Okay? If you have um if you have somebody who gave you feedback, or you did paid feedback, right? Something to ask yourself, like if you were getting notes, and how should I say this? Because this is a bit of a practice, right? There's just like writing as a craft. I feel like being able to take feedback is also like a skill that you have to learn. So you have to look at, um, if you're getting feedback from someone, is this someone who like read the story with depth? Do they have cultural competency, if that is, relevant? Um, for example, and okay, I'll just give you an example. So I submitted a screenplay to a competition, like, I don't know, 2 years ago or something like that. I never submit to competitions, but I did. I was like, why not? Like, let's just do it. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll like pay for some script feedback. Let's just see what comes back. Now I ended up getting feedback from two people. And one person, like, neither of the feedback was like particularly like, you know, like illuminating. Like there wasn't anything that was like, oh my god, like, yes, this is like the thing that it needs. But I was like, okay, some of this stuff is helpful. So one of them, some of the stuff was helpful. I was like, okay, that makes sense. That's a good idea. I can play with something like that, and make bring more like tension and more like red herrings into the story, because it's a thriller. The other person who read it, and I've had several people read it. So I had those two pieces of feedback. All right. And then I also had several other people who have read this script. And the second set of notes that came back from this paid coverage was like, did this person read the script, or are they confusing this with somebody else? Because there were so many things, so many like weird assumptions that they had made, that I was like, but this isn't even indicated on the page. Now, that could be a blind spot of mine. Maybe I think it's not indicated, but I did indicate on the page, except that every single other person who I've gotten feedback from, they didn't have any of these same issues. They completely understood it. So I know that this is just this one person. This might be an anomaly. All right. So again, you don't have to take every note. This is where you have to look at it and be like, is this person giving anything that is of value? Is this person saying stuff that you're like, oh, they're making these big assumptions, or maybe they're making cultural assumptions, maybe they're making assumptions that kind of show a bias, like sexism or something like that. Or maybe they just weren't reading it with detail. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it's people either like don't really know how to give feedback. That might be someone you know, or honestly, some of the paid services, if you don't know who is reading your work, you really don't know what their qualifications are, or if they are the right kind of person to be giving you feedback, because every story is not for everybody. All right. And that includes the feedback. So while you want to stay open, you also don't have to take every note. You have to be discerning about what is actually going to serve the story, and what is like, okay, this person, either they missed something, or they weren't really paying attention, or there's something, there's a disconnect here between them and the story, or them and this section. It may not even be all the feedback. It might be like a particular note that they give you. So the reason I say that is both on the be open and on the side of you don't have to take every note. You do want to be in service to the story. This is, again, not about your ego. People's feedback, people's response to your story, even if they like it or they hate it, is not a they like or they hate you. All right. You are not your work. I actually said that in a live last month, talking about the mindset of this. So you want to approach feedback and approach your revision from the perspective of, I am in service to the story, right? And the story is separate from me. So looking at the notes that you receive, looking at the feedback that you receive, is implementing a particular note going to make the story better? Not, is it going to make me have to delete this thing that I really love and I don't want to delete it, so I'm going to ignore this note? Not that. Really look at, are these notes going to make the story better? Are they going to make the story worse? Is it going to, and maybe it'll shift the story. It might be something that's like, oh, this is really gonna change the direction of the story, but that's gonna make it better. This direction is actually much stronger, way more compelling, more dynamic for the characters. Maybe that is a note that you should take. I don't know. I got a big smile on my face. I feel like that might be a note you should take. But if you're like, oh, this direction is really in contrast to what I'm trying to say with the story, with the tone that I'm trying to build into it, or I have certain plans. I'm thinking now, my brain's a little bit on TV. I'm a TV writer, even though I'm working on a feature film right now. But thinking about television, if you have like, okay, here's this big storyline, and they're like, oh, well, just get rid of that character. You might be like, oh, no, no, no. I actually have to keep this character because they're going to be big later, and this is where it's going to go. The person reading that pilot may not know that because they don't know where the rest of the story is going to go. So you have to think and come to it from the perspective of, it's not about me, but I am here in service of the story. And so I want to really look at these notes and implement notes in service to the story. All right, so in service to the story, you want to also pay attention to commonalities that you see in the feedback that you get. All right, if multiple people are giving you similar feedback, pay attention to it. There is something there. There is something that you are missing, something that is not working, that needs your attention. All right. So if multiple people give similar feedback, pay attention. I will give you an example. There is a feature film that I wrote. I came in as a second writer, so I did the rewrite of it, and the director wanted the first act to be a certain way, wanted the character to be like really, really dislikable. And the feedback when we were trying to attach a female lead, every female lead was like, I don't like her. We've seen this type of character. It's tired. Don't want to play her, looking for something different. And even though the character through the rest of the story evolves and grows, it was too extreme in the beginning. So if that is the feedback we're consistently getting over and over, which honestly, I totally felt that. Like, I felt the same way. I was like, I think this is a little too far, but that was the direction that they wanted to go. And so the feedback, if you're for months, every, actress, every like leading lady that you're reaching out to, is saying the same thing. And I'm talking like these were big names that were saying the same thing. It's like, yo, this is not working. Like, we need to change something in the story. There's a commonality there. There's something that is not working, not only from like a story standpoint, but from a character standpoint. They're like, people aren't going to want to watch this because she's so terrible. So we had to look at that and be like, okay, it went too far. We got to pull it back. All right. If you have another thing in terms of commonality, if you are getting repeat notes throughout the script, for example, let's say someone is giving you, like, you're getting feedback from a person, but they repeatedly are saying the same thing through the script, like, this character's motivation isn't clear, or these actions seem unmotivated. That is telling you that there is a thread of something that is not working, and it's not working from start to finish. It's not just not working in this one scene or this one scene over here. You have a consistent issue that needs to be addressed that is affecting your entire story. When you are seeing things like that, you want to pay attention because it means that something needs your attention. All right. You want to look at, like, this is the stuff that is not working. And pay attention to what we're going to get to this, the note underneath the note. What is the commonality? Like, if you're getting this kind of common feedback or a common thread throughout, what is that note really saying is not working in your story, right? So if that sounded a little confusing, this is where I'm going to get into that phrase, finding the note underneath the note. If you are not familiar with that phrase, this is a phrase used in screenwriting that is referencing when you get feedback and from someone, you get a note, but the note itself is not the real problem. you look at it and you're like, oh, this actually indicates a much deeper problem down here. All right. So the note underneath the note, for example, I actually told this story in another live. So there is actually, I'm going to save that one. I'll tell in a few minutes, but I'm going to save it. So getting back to the note underneath the note. The truth is not everybody knows how to give good feedback. Not everybody knows how to give clear feedback. Sometimes they can spot something that isn't working, but they don't really know how to articulate what actually isn't working or how to fix it. What this can sometimes look like is now we're giving you suggestions for things that you can do instead, because they're trying to come with a solution. Like they don't want to just come with a problem, this isn't working. They want to come with a solution, and it's a solution that they think might fix it because they can't really nail what the actual problem is. So for example, there was a project, a feature film. There were two writers I was working with when I was working in development, when I was a development exec, and they had a romantic comedy. It actually originally, I think it was just a romantic comedy, and then it became like a romantic comedy Christmas movie. Now they tried for 2 years to sell the script. They couldn't sell the script. Everybody kept giving them the same feedback. Like, yeah, like it's pretty good, but like it just needs more, right? Like it just needs more. Or there was a consistent note of like, well, I think we just need to clarify what that character's motivation is. There was like a character, the nemesis, but like she was a nemesis for no reason. So it's like, oh, like I just don't really get why she's doing this. So like if you could just clarify that or add more conflict. They kept getting these kind of vague notes. So everyone that they had pitched it to was like, yeah, it's good, but it just needs more. Like it's not there yet. Everybody else that they went to in terms of writer friends that were like, hey, what's not working? They would come back with like, it needs more conflict, or the motivation needs to be clear, or this, that, or the other. And what the writers were doing is they were looking at those individual notes and they were trying to address the individual notes. What they were not seeing, which I saw when I came to it later, and it was being presented to me as, is this something that should be greenlit? I read it. They kind of got the same notes from other people. They're like, yeah, like it just needs a little more, but I think it's not far off. Like if you could just add a little more conflict, it'll be there. And I was like, guys, this is not ready. Like, I'm sorry, but it's not ready. And it needs a lot more work than you realize, because all these notes that you keep getting, you're getting them because your character development is not making sense. And they like your characters. Your characters are funny. They're dynamic. You've got good dialogue, but what they're doing doesn't make sense. And nobody knows how to really articulate that because they like your characters. They just don't really understand why they're doing what they're doing. And I can tell you that it's not tracking through. Your character development is where it's falling apart. That's why people keep saying things like, well, add more conflict, because what's happening is not making sense and it's getting slow. And it's getting slow because you haven't really developed what's actually driving these characters. So I was able to see like all these different things that people are saying. What really is happening is their characters need more development so that the dynamics actually make sense. And so we really care what's going to happen to them. And we're not just laughing along. Like, yeah, it's a funny story. It was good in that respect. It had good dialogue, but we weren't really driven to care what was really going to happen with them. So they didn't like to hear that, but they did take the feedback and they were like, okay, we're going back to the character development. The character development did change some of the direction of the story, but when it did, they were like, oh, this is so much better. This is really in line with what we wanted to do in the beginning that we didn't quite nail. And then we kept trying to incorporate all these different people's feedback, and it just veered further and further from like what we originally intended. And this got us back to it. And so not only did they feel better, so much better about their project, but 2 months after that, like they made the changes pretty quick. They made the changes in maybe a week or two because they were like really focused on it. And once they made those changes, about 2 months later, maybe 2.5 months later, they got greenlit by BET who had previously rejected the project. So that's how important it is to understand what is this note really saying. All right. Now, if you are getting so your notes, when it comes to the note underneath the note, big things I think to look at are your character development. Is this saying something about the character development that needs to be clear? Is this saying something about the world building that needs to be clear? Could be an issue of story structure, but I think a lot of the root things have to do with like character development, world building, like, oh, I don't understand why blah 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 is happening. For example, this isn't really a note underneath the note. It was kind of like a direct note. I was developing a TV series a few years ago that was set in a martial arts school, and a showrunner who read kind of like the some of the development. I wasn't pitching it, but he was reading some of like the development and what I had planned for the pilot. And he was like, I'm a little confused because she's like trying to get a black belt, but she's also teaching classes. And like, I think that's confusing. Shouldn't it be one or the other? And what he didn't understand, which I was like, okay, I'm going to have to clarify this in the actual pilot, is that's common in martial arts schools. Right. That is a common thing, is like the students teach the other students. So you can be a blue belt teaching a white belt. You can be a brown belt teaching an orange belt. And so that's a very, like, that is a cultural element to martial arts schools. And I'm like, cool, I need to just make sure that I am clarifying that through the story, because that's just an element of he doesn't know this world. So if he doesn't know this world, there's going to be other people who don't know this world. And I need to make that clear. So that was sort of like a direct piece of feedback. But again, the note underneath the note can indicate, oh, there's something about this world that I need to clarify. There's some other information or other things that I need to hint at. There are things, clues that I need to give, or it can indicate something bigger, like I said, a big character issue. Those are the notes that you really want to address first, are the things that are the big ones, especially if you're getting a note where you're like, oh, they're saying this, but the real problem that's pointing to is this over here. Like, they're saying they're not sure about the character's motivation. The real problem is your character needs more development. Or they might be saying, well, your characters, I'm a little confused by them taking this specific action in a scene. And what the note underneath that might be, oh, their transition from earlier in the story when they were doing this to where they get here has not been clear enough. So I need to make sure that I am tracking that through so that when they get here, it's not super jarring that they did this thing. You want to look at what those deeper story issues are and what the note is really pointing to. What is the story issue? This is where looking at the commonalities, like I said, the commonalities that you get in feedback from different people is important, because that will point to, oh, there's this issue in the story. There's a continuity issue here. There is a consistency issue here. There's a pacing issue here. If you're getting the same note over and over, you want to be able to interpret what that is. So that's where you can get into the note underneath the note. All right. The next thing is, when it comes to feedback and addressing feedback, and this is a little bit more when you've moved from the I'm getting it ready to pitch to it's either pitched or it's in motion, and now I am getting feedback from decision makers like producers, executives, etc. Is you have to know how to pick your battles, because you are working with a team. And so you are not necessarily always going to be able to get everything that you want in your script, especially when somebody else, I mean, if you're producing yourself, you can do whatever you want. You're producing it, you're funding it, you're the big kahuna decision maker, you could do whatever you want. Most of us, that's not the case. Now, if that is the case, kudos to you, but also maybe listen to people, because like I said, people want to help you make your story better. But when you are on that side of like, okay, now I'm getting, feedback from people that are higher up, people who are decision makers, people who I am, beholden to, even if this story is my own, or if you are in a writer's room for someone else, someone else's creation, pick your battles. You don't have to fight every battle. Some stuff you could be like, all right, let me let this one go. And let me just make this change. But if there is something that if there's a piece of feedback you get that you feel really strongly against and you have a good reason for it, it's not just I don't like it, but it's this doesn't serve the story because blah blah blah, or it will unravel this element, or it is regressive for the character, or it's going to set us up in this way when we really need to go over here. If you can make a good case for why you need to keep the story going the direction that you're trying to go, or why you need to not take a note, then make the case. But don't just pick a battle because you don't like what somebody had to say, or your ego's getting in the way, or you just don't feel like changing it. There may be multiple things you're like, I want to fight for this and I want to fight for this. Like, this piece is really important to the story or the integrity of the creative. Yes, you don't have, like I said, you don't have to take every note, but you have to know when to pick your battles and you have to know how, and making a very clear case as to why the direction that you are choosing is the better direction. That is what you need to do. Not just be like, no, I don't like that. Right? Be clear about why it's not serving the story and what is going to serve the story. The other thing that you can do in relation to picking your battles is, depending on what the note is, I wish I had an example. I'm sorry. I wish I had an example. You may be able to give them a little bit of what they're looking for, but maybe in a different way, right? Dang, I feel like I should have an example from Wicked City season 3, because we did get some notes there where I was like, where I was a little confused, and then I'm like, oh, I think what they want is more tension in the scenes, but the way they were suggesting it was like, it would have derailed things and put it in like taking the story in a different direction. So I was like, okay, if what they really want is more tension, let's build it this way. And then I would go back to them and be like, hey, so the problem with this was X, Y, and Z with their note. The problem with your, this suggestion was X, Y, and Z. So we did this instead. How does that work? Right. And so there's a pick your battles, learn to stand on, for the things that you feel really strongly about. Like, know what hill you are willing to die on. It can't be all the hills. Know which hill you're willing to die on. And then when you have something that you want to go in a different direction of, have a reason why and an explanation, like a reason why theirs won't work and an explanation of like, oh, what if we did this? Or present, like I said, an alternative. So it can be, I want to stick to my guns about what I have, or it could be, I hear what you're saying. What if we do this instead? Right? Two options. There might be more options, but those are like the two ones. And on the topic of pick your battles, that I want to give you with is having a clear reason why what you have needs to stay, or presenting an alternative. If you're like, this, what they're suggesting is just not going to work, have a different alternative. This is why understanding the note beneath the note is important, because what they may be saying, I said this earlier, what they may be saying or what they may be suggesting may be something that is actually, they're trying to find a solution because they don't really know how to articulate what's not working. So they're trying to find a solution for what they think may work. And if you can interpret what it is that they're really looking for, if you don't like what they're suggesting, then you can come up with a good, viable alternative that everybody is happy with. All right. That is the collaboration piece of this process. The writing can be collaborative if you're writing with someone, but the revision is where you're getting that feedback, where you're implementing notes, especially when it's actually in motion and you're working with the team. So make sure that you have, before that part, before you pitch it, make sure that you have the right people to give you feedback. All right. Who are your writing friends? Who are your people? Even if maybe it's not a writer friend, maybe it's a producer that knows story. Who are your people that you can go to say, hey, I've got this script. I feel like it's ready to go, but I want to get some feedback. Or I'm having trouble with this element and I would really love some feedback. You have to have your trusted people for that. And that's one of the things that we do in Black Screenwriter Alliance. Is that is why we have community. We are building community so you can build those relationships and build your support to give and get feedback, to give and get perspectives, to give and share ideas when you're stuck in your story. That is what you get when you have community. So come check us out, right? Try it free for 7 days, blackscreenwriteralliance.mn.co. We do many things in the community, co-working calls, we have workshops, we have industry guests, we have a monthly strategy call where you can come on and share an issue or a challenge you're facing, and we will all collectively problem solve it with you together. And we have a goal setting call. We have lots of different things and replays for all of our past events. So, when you join, you can also see, once you're a full member, you can see all of our past workshops, our past guest conversations, really good stuff. And we're having a guest this Thursday. If you're watching this live, if you're watching this on the replay, maybe it's already in the past. So this is what I have for you. If you have any questions, pop them in the comments. If you're watching on the replay, pop them in the comments regarding feedback. We're going to talk a little bit more about feedback on Thursday. I'm going to go live again, but that is going to be a little bit more about how to handle the emotions when the feedback hurts. All right. When it's like, oh my God, they hated it, or the feedback is harsh, or you're like, oh my God, I suck, I'm awful. We're going to talk about how to manage that so that you can still move forward and get your script to the place where it is still in the best that it can be. All right. So yes, make sure that you like and subscribe so that you know when I go live, because I'll be live on Thursday. And also make sure that you check out our community, Black Screenwriter Alliance. Try it 7 days free, blackscreenwriteralliance.mn.co. And I will see you guys in the next live.